I was functionally illiterate until I was 15. Having struggled my way through the illiteracy, I eventually became a college professor, tenured at the College of Southern Nevada. Along the way, I acquired 6 college degrees, 2 master's degrees, and 2 PhDs. Now, retired. I spend most of my time as an author and a researcher working on humanitarian projects. I was born 2 years after Adolf Hitler committed suicide. Not since the Second World War have I observed the United States ignore such a universal, inimical problem as exists in homeowners associations. When I started working on the problem related to homeowners associations, it became clear to me that homeowners were suffering from a condition similar to post-traumatic stress disorder, which I later referred to as HOA syndrome, the result of longitudinal harassment by homeowners associations, management companies, collection companies, and homeowners association law firms. At that time, I believed the solution of the problem was simple, direct, and clear. Inform homeowners associations about what was happening to the residents in the subdivisions. Having supplied the information in my publication, HOA Syndrome, a two-tailed psychiatric disorder, I thought the homeowners association would stop their deportment. I know now that I was delusional. My expectations of these members of the human race was well beyond their moral and ethical capacity. Over the years, I have learned that as a result of huge amounts of profiteering connected to the homeowners associations, management companies, collection companies, and HOA law firms, there was no way that I could get them to stop. Speaking with the owner of Nevada's largest collection company, I queried, "Would you stop doing what you're doing if you knew that you were harming people?" As if he was stoned, his response was immediate and emphatic, "No." It was clear to me that it was going to require government intervention to make them cease and desist from what they were doing to homeowners. To date, our government has refused to take a role in preventing the abuse and corruption in homeowners associations. To ensure that I clearly understood what was taking place in homeowners association, I embarked on multiple legal cases. I made sure that those legal cases were only connected to me. With those cases, I moved forward through mediation, arbitration, small claims, and district court. Soon I will be before the Supreme Court. The research afforded me the information that I'm presenting to you today. I can tell you, as listeners and readers, fighting homeowners associations is an enormous battle. I do everything pro se. This means that I am my own attorney. To accomplish this, I had to learn about the law in ways I had never ever imagined. This approach creates another problem. The courts are not designed to handle pro se clients. They're not very inviting, nor are they interested in solving the problem. To make matters worse, the courts have been informed to stay out of problems related to homeowners associations. In case after case, the courts have turned these matters away, not only mine, but all others. To ensure the homeowners associations are not disturbed by legal matters at the enormous expense of homeowners across the country. For myself, I rely on a philosophy garnered by Ayn Rand to motivate me.
Your Honor, I shall call no witnesses. This will be my testimony and my summation.
Take the oath.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Thousands of years ago, the first man discovered how to make fire. He was probably burned at the stake he had taught his brothers to light, but he left them a gift they had not conceived, and he lifted darkness off the earth. Throughout the centuries, there were men who took first steps down new roads, armed with nothing but their own vision. The great creators, the thinkers, the artists, the scientists, the inventors, stood alone against the men of their time. Every new thought was opposed, every new invention was denounced. But the men of unborrowed vision went ahead. They fought, they suffered, and they paid, but they won. No creator was prompted by a desire to please his brothers hated the gift he offered. His truth was his only motive. His work was his only goal. His work, not those who used it. His creation, not the benefits others derived from it. The creation which gave form to his truth. He held his truth above all things and against all men. He went ahead, whether others agreed with him or not, with his integrity as his only banner. He served nothing and no one. He lived for himself. And only by living for himself was he able to achieve the things which are the glory of mankind. Such is the nature of achievement. Man cannot survive except through his mind. He comes on earth unarmed. His brain is his only weapon. But the mind is an attribute of the individual. There is no such thing as a collective brain. The man who thinks must think and act on his own. The reasoning mind cannot work under any form of compulsion. It cannot be subordinated to the needs, opinions, or wishes of others. It is not an object of sacrifice. The Creator stands on his own judgment. The parasite follows the opinions of others. The Creator thinks. The parasite copies. The Creator produces. The parasite loots. The Creator's concern is the conquest of nature. The parasite's concern is the conquest of man. The Creator requires independence. He neither serves nor rules. He deals with men by free exchange and voluntary choice. The parasite seeks power. He wants to bind all men together in common action and common slavery. He claims that man is only a tool for the use of others, that he must think as they think, act as they act, and live in selfless, joyless servitude to any need but his own. Look at history. Everything we have, every great achievement has come from the independent work of some independent mind. Every horror and destruction came from attempts to force men into a herd of brainless, soulless robots, without personal rights, without personal ambition, without will, hope, or dignity. It is an ancient conflict. It has another name: the individual against the collective. Our country, the noblest country in the history of men, was based on the principle of individualism, the principle of man's inalienable rights. It was a country where a man was free to seek his own happiness, to gain and produce, not to give up and renounce, to prosper, not to starve, to achieve, not to plunder, to hold as his highest possession a sense of his personal value, and as his highest virtue his self-respect. Look at the results. That is what the collectivists are now asking you to destroy, as much of the earth has been destroyed. I am an architect. I know what is to come by the principle on which it is built. We are approaching a world in which I cannot permit myself to live. My ideas are my property. They were taken from me by force, by breach of contract. No appeal was left to me. It was believed that my work belonged to others to do with as they pleased. They had a claim upon me without my consent, that it was my duty to serve them without choice or reward. Now you know why I dynamited Cortland. I designed Cortland. I made it possible. I destroyed it. I agreed to design it for the purpose of seeing it built as I wished. That was the price I set for my work. I was not paid. My building was disfigured at the whim of others who took all the benefits of my work and gave me nothing in return. I came here to say that I do not recognize anyone's right to 1 minute of my life, nor to any part of my energy, nor to any achievement of mine, no matter who makes the claim. It had to be said. The world is perishing from an orgy of self-sacrificing. I came here to be heard in the name of every man of independence still left in the world. I wanted to state my terms. I do not care to work or live on any others. My terms are a man's right to exist for his own sake.
I've tried a number of approaches to get the Homeowners Association to stop doing what they're doing to homeowners. In one of many cases, I offered to manage the association for $1. My offer was rejected. In the end, a management company was paid $30,000 plus fees and expenses to be the association's manager. In another matter, I filed 4 separate lawsuits in one homeowners association. I sent an offer to the association stating that I would drop all my lawsuits if they would stop fining and foreclosing on the homeowners in the homeowners association. They sent me a letter stating that it was against the rules. This, of course, was a complete lie. To spare the homeowners of the expense of my lawsuits, I dropped everything against the association. So why is taking legal action such a problem in homeowners associations? In 2 words, tort reform.
This is Larry Bodine, editor-in-chief of Lawyers.com, and we're at the American Association for Justice meeting in Chicago. And today we caught up with the new president, Mary Alice McLarty. One of the questions I had for you is about the so-called litigation explosion. Is it true that lawsuits are just out of control in this country?
Well, actually, lawsuits are not out of control. In fact, they're declining all across the United States. We've seen survey after survey that show that not nearly as many lawsuits are being filed. There has been a lot of tort reform legislation across the country, and it does affect people's right to bring lawsuits. Keeps narrowing it more and more until some of the rights are actually being taken away.
What does tort reform exactly accomplish?
Well, tort reform is a strange name. A lot of people don't even know what tort means. But it basically is taking away people's right to have redress or hold somebody accountable for wrongs that they've done to them. For instance, if somebody is negligent and they've hurt somebody, they should have to pay for it instead of your insurance and your health insurance paying for it. The wrongdoer should pay for that. We have empirical data now in Texas. The tort reform was in 2003, and the citizens were promised that the insurance premiums would go down and that doctors' premiums would go down. But that has not happened, and medical costs have not gone down.
Shortly after the September 11 attacks on the World Trade Center in New York, the American Association for Justice started the Trial Lawyers Care program. What does this mean for consumers?
Trial Lawyers Care is a nonprofit organization that AAJ established after the 9/11, in fact, almost immediately after 9/11. We wanted to make sure the victims were compensated, so we went to the Hill and helped Congress pass this federal fund, the one that was administered by Ken Feinberg. And in order for this to happen, we volunteered to pro bono, that means without any payment, represent the victims, and we had over 1,100 lawyers involved in the program. One thing we're looking at right now are veterans issues, and veterans, a variety of different types of claim, and providing legal help for them for free.
As a result of tort reform, homeowners associations have subdivision homeowners locked into a living nightmare, and it's only getting worse. I've said this before, and I'm going to re-emphasize my statement to you again. There is no money in resolve. The homeowners associations, management companies, collection companies, and HOA law firms only make money, big money, when there are problems in the subdivisions. Therefore, if there are no problems, the business of the day is create problems for the better good of the profit making at the expense of the homeowner. The Homeowners Association Board of Directors is the only group with the power to inflict harm on the homeowners. They authorize all action that takes place in the subdivision. As a result, management companies, collection companies, and HOA law firms encourage homeowners associations to go after anything and everything and turn it over to them for the resolve. In the end, enormous amounts of money flow into management companies, collection companies, and HOA law firm coffers. Groups of people who do not own property in the subdivision and could care less about what they're doing to the homeowners or the subdivision. The order of the day is to inflict harm and, whenever possible, foreclose, foreclose, foreclose. It is the foreclosure where the big bucks are made. National firms are going after homeowners through the homeowners associations, creating and buying up liens so they can foreclose on the homeowners. Management companies, collection companies, and HOA law firms make money whether they win or they lose. Ultimately, it is the homeowner, the family, and the innocent children who suffered the draconian consequences as a result of the corruption fostered by a government who chooses to turn their back on their most important resource. At this point, I'd like you to capture some important concepts and terms that will help you keep up with what's happening in homeowners associations. I invite you to hear that in some cases, due to the lack of terminology, it was necessary for me to create terms and concepts to communicate with you, the listener and the reader.
The root of HOA syndrome is intentional, longitudinal, and methodical harassment levied upon a homeowner. Shortly after the individual takes possession of their property, the HOA strategically begins to focus on the homeowner's minor, if not non-existent, infractions. Like ravenous parasites, these organizations feed off of fear-based harassment. The homeowner, now locked into a mortgage, feels powerless over the HOA's relentless hounding for more and more money. Summarily, the evolution of schoolyard bullying and lunch money stealing has turned into adult comportment known in the legal world as racketeering, financial exploitation, extortion, and neighborhood money pilfering. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, has its root, in most cases, in a single event: an auto accident, a physical fight, war, rape, a death. Sometimes individuals may acquire PTSD over time from such cases as ongoing molestation, living in a violent environment, as seen in our troops returning from Iraq and Afghanistan, extended chaos from fragmented relationships, or unsafe living conditions. Though both HOA syndrome and PTSD have similar signs and symptoms, HOA syndrome has longitudinal, intermittent, intentional, and financial harassment as its primary ongoing characteristics. In the case of most psychiatric disorders, the diagnosis is one-sided. The diagnostician focuses on an individual's psychopathology to discover if the signs and symptoms meet the criteria or standard of a specific diagnosis or diagnosis, such as the mood disordered individual, the sleep disordered individual, the schizophrenic disordered individual, etc. There are a few psychiatric disorders, such as shared psychotic disorder and Stockholm syndrome, where individuals and groups are diagnosed. Dr. Solomon has identified HOA syndrome as having two classifications and refers to it as a two-tailed disorder. The syndrome may have opposite psychopathological outcomes on each individual from the same source as a result of the same disease. Simply stated, the origin of the disease can produce diametrically opposing signs and symptoms given the same psychiatric diagnosis, HOA syndrome. The disease manifests itself with different characteristics in the perpetrator and the victim. The perpetrator known as a capo. Remarkably, both are homeowners in the same homeowners association, with the association being at the root of HOA syndrome. The predators, those in position of authority, volunteer to be on the board of the HOA, also known as capos. The capos gain power and an inflated sense of self. Remarkably, they hire outside agencies at enormous cost to themselves and their neighbors to oversee their infliction of harm through fines and penalties. Once in power, they impose more and more punishment on their fellow neighbors. The treatment of fines, liens, and foreclosure on their neighbors caused these HOA board members to lose all touch with reality. Almost as if in a psychotic state or delusion, their actions continue, all the while knowing what they are doing to others. As time passes, some HOA board members become sadists who stand in judgment and control of their fellow human beings. They turn their backs on those in need, especially the elderly, who are not in a position to defend or protect themselves. They are easy prey for the HOA. While this is taking place, private, for-profit companies reap the bounties of their free HOA laborers, becoming tantamount to Nazi concentration camp capos. This tale of the HOA syndrome seems to spur, for some, the sadistic side of their personality. At the time of the writing of this article, Dr. Solomon has yet to uncover the origin of their sadism. Were they bullied on the schoolyard, molested by their neighbor, traumatized by a death in the family? Is there a neurological anomaly that fosters their cruel behavior? Or are they taking the path of their predecessors and going along with the cruelty just to be a part of the group, the predators? Having signed the documents, the CC&Rs, the homeowners unwittingly subordinate their constitutional rights to the HOA. The legal statutes, laws that feed the CC&Rs, is literally the hammer that repeatedly raises and pounds the entire neighborhood into submission, both psychologically and physiologically into ruination. Like something out of Rod Sterling's Twilight Zone, individuals roam the neighborhoods, pointing their fingers at each other, searching for the transgressions of their neighbors. They have a weed. Look at the color of their door. There, see? They have a brown spot in the lawn. And on and on and on. As time passes, the homeowners residing in communities become stricken individually and collectively with HOA syndrome. After a while, they begin to go after their neighbors, whom they do not like. Each home exists like an island in the middle of a separate country, no longer functioning as a community. Desperate and despondent, the homeowners have acquired so much pathology that the collective nihilism and hopelessness is visually apparent. From a psychiatric point of view, how is HOA syndrome manifested? Because this is a newly identified psychiatric disorder, it is important for the viewer to capture an understanding of some terminology used in the research article. Barbed wire sickness is an overwhelming sense of futility and meaninglessness of existence, involuntary confinement, sadness, and depression. Much of what takes place in homeowners associations meets the standard for bullying. Whether the bullying is against a young person or an elder, this bullying has a tremendous psychological effect on those who are in homeowners associations. It is of a great surprise that while bullying has become a national concern, the bullying continues to be an increasing problem in homeowners associations. The definition of conspiracy is an agreement between two or more parties to deprive a third party or group of their legal rights with the goal of deceiving them in order to obtain an illegal objective. Capos are people in a position of authority, such as those occupied by a fellow homeowner or HOA board member. During World War II, capos, who were concentration prisoners themselves, for extra food, better housing, and less manual work, would carry out and commit horrible atrocities against their fellow inmates at the instructions of their immediate Nazi SS superiors. They more often than not treated other inmates, aka homeowners, with extreme harshness, brutality, and cruelty. Covenants, conditions, and restrictions, the CC&Rs, are applied to homeowners who live in areas that have a homeowners association or an HOA. CC&Rs set forth particular rules that must be followed by the homeowner. Failure to comply with the CC&Rs can result in warnings, fines, and legal action against the homeowner, including foreclosure. An agreement to purchase in a HOA community is assessed as an agreement to follow all CC&Rs and give up individual rights. Draconian law, or their applicator, is considered to be excessively harsh and disproportionately severe to the reality of the infraction, such as steal a piece of bread, lose a finger; steal a loaf of bread, lose your life. This approach is both authoritarian and tyrannical, an extreme and severe form of repression and relentless cruelty. Members of the board of directors of the homeowners associations inflict these draconian judgments on their fellow homeowners. As time passes, the severity of the infliction of pain on the homeowner increases as the board member gets more and more pleasure from his or her actions. A ghetto is an urban area, in this case defined as an HOA community, because of social, legal, or economic pressure exerted on members of the community by the HOA board and management companies. Elder abuse is defined as a single or repeated act or lack of appropriate action occurring with any relationship where there is an expectation of trust which causes harm or distress to an older person or persons. Elder abuse continues to be an ongoing problem in homeowners associations. Elders are a target for homeowners associations. Elders are easy money for homeowners associations, as elders have a very difficult time defending themselves and at the same time are enormously embarrassed that they cannot take care of themselves. Having once built their lives to get the home where they now reside, homeowners association, management companies, collection companies, and HOA law firms work to target elders in their own homes, inducing an enormous stress, both physically and psychologically. It is Dr. Solomon's hope that you have listened to the section on science and are aware of what's happening when stress is inflicted on the body. Elder abuse is also referred to as elder mistreatment, senior abuse, abuse in later life, abuse of older adults, abuse of older women, and abuse of older men. Ghost lawyering is a concept that law firms use in promoting members of the board with legal direction and advice. These board members then parrot that information in meetings as an attempt to appear knowledgeable in the field of law. Ultimately, the goal is to scare and intimidate homeowners. While ghost lawyering is against the law, to Dr. Solomon's knowledge, there has never been a case against a law firm for ghost lawyering in an HOA. Hospice neighborhoods are where sick and elderly people reside. As is often the case, one partner dies before the other, leaving them to fend for themselves as they move closer to the end of their life. Intermittent episodic remissions are moments in time, minutes, hours, days, weeks, where an individual is free of existing psychophysiological pathology, unpredictable periods where pathology is not evident or recognized. A lien is a legal claim or a hold on some type of property, whether personal or real, making it collateral against monies or services owed to another person or entity. Any property that carries a lien can be forced into sale by the lender or HOA in order to collect what is owed or claim to be owed. If the homeowner decides to sell the property, the lien holder must be paid before the title will be cleared for transfer to a new buyer. Malice aforethought is an intention to commit an act or omission and a high degree of probability that such an act or omission will result in the death or serious injury of another person in the form of money or physical or emotional harm. I'm going to turn this section over to Dr. Solomon so that he can give you a diagrammatic presentation of multi-generational equity theft.
I want to take a moment and talk to you about multi-generational theft. I will tell you that this, in fact, has existed for thousands of years, but it's never had a name to my knowledge. So I've identified this as multi-generational equity theft in homeowners associations. And here's how it works. Let's assume that we take a period of time. We'll go from 1900 all the way to 2015. At each 20-year period, 1920, 1940, 1960, 1980, 2000, we'll assume that a new generation enters the picture. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, if you like, buy a home in 1900, and they worked hard to get that home. And they worked their whole lives for it. And in 1920, they passed their equity from that home on to their family. And now their son, their daughter, their children, having received that equity, have now received something that they didn't have before. And now it's 1940, and now their children and their family have now picked up that equity plus the former equity. That equity's become compounded, and there's been appreciation on the property. Values have gone up. And so it's 1960, and it continues to go forward. And it's 1980, and it continues to go forward. And now the family's doing pretty well. Having started from the bottom rung, having started with next to nothing, now these family members, the relatives of this people here to these people here, they're doing well. They're happy, and so are their children. Now enter the homeowners association. And they have bought into the homeowners association, something that they did not do. What happens? Well, the HOA now steps in to what is known as a super priority lien. The super priority lien allows an association to step in front of all the other mortgage liens, the first, the second, the third, any other lien. They then wipe out this homeowner's home and they take it over. All of the equity built up over 100 years is now gone, all in the name of multi-generational equity theft, all by permission of our government.
The definition of the term psychophysiological is mind-body illness, any stress-related physical illness. Racketeering is an organized conspiracy to commit extortion. If an enterprise that has committed any two of 35 crimes, 27 of them federal crimes, and 8 state crimes within a 10-year period, they then can be brought up on racketeering charges. A super priority lien, a type of lien available only to homeowners associations, is unlike any other. These liens usurp all other lien laws. This means that if you have a mortgage on your property, a first or second, the super priority lien stands in front of those mortgages or other liens. If the property is foreclosed on, it wipes out all of the other mortgages. Upon the foreclosure, the homeowner loses their property to the homeowners association and is still responsible for the unpaid mortgages. Intentional wrongs against a person is tort law, such as assault, battery, false imprisonment, HOA syndrome, and infliction of emotional distress and physical harm. Unjust enrichment is at the expense of another, where an obligation to make restitution arises, regardless of liability or wrongdoing. Vicarious lawyering by proxy is a process used by lawyers to generate more and more money. Dr. Solomon has been involved in a number of these cases. When a homeowner moves out of an association but still has legal issues and problems, the former homeowner may still take action to regain and recoup whatever funds they believe they have lost. The law firms step in and defend those cases. No matter what happens with respect to legal fees, the association is charged for those fees. In one case, Dr. Solomon sued for $100. The legal bill to the association is still currently in excess of $1,500 and still mounting as the case is still pending. Unfortunately, the law firm charges the homeowners association for that legal bill rather than issue a check for the $100. Additionally, the attorneys made sure that Dr. Solomon was not allowed to enter into small claims court, always arguing that homeowner associations, whether or not they go through mediation, are not allowed into small claims court. This forced the case into district court. The purpose? Legal fees and more legal fees. So the concept of vicarious lawyering by proxy means that the attorneys are using someone else inside of the association to produce legal fees that are charged to the association. And it is unlikely that the association knows what is going on.
Henry Reardon, you are charged, along with Kenneth Daninger, in absentia, with one count of violation of Article 64 of the Fair Share Law. How do you plead, sir?
I do not recognize this court's right to try me, nor do I recognize any of my actions as a crime.
Simply refusing to obey the law is not a defense.
If you believe you may seize my property simply because you need it, well, then so does any burglar. The only difference is a burglar doesn't ask my permission. If you feel you have the right to use force against me, then show it for what it is. Bring guns.
Sir, we have no intention of pointing guns and seizing your property.
Then why are we here?
Mr. Reardon, you are misrepresenting the letter and the intent of the Fair Share Law. It is based on the highest principle, the principle of the public good. You wouldn't want it misunderstood that you work for nothing but your own profit.
Indeed, I want it understood clearly. I do not recognize the good of others as a justification for my existence. If their fair share demands that I get nothing for my labors, that it requires me to be a victim, then I say, public good be damned, I'll have no part of it.
And how does that benefit your fellow man?
I do not owe you an answer, but I could tell you in 100 ways. Thousands of jobs, billions in revenue, fueling our economy despite your efforts to destroy the very foundation of our existence. And I believe most of my fellow men would say the same, if they had a voice.
No, we need an example, not a martyr.
Can't set a precedent here, not with this man. Mr. Reardon, on your behalf, the court has entered a plea of no contest, and this panel has found you guilty. You are hereby sentenced to 10 years in prison and a fine of $50 million. Sentencing of Kenneth Danninger will be withheld pending his appearance before this body. Now, Mr. Reardon, taking into consideration your distinguished achievements, your contributions to society, and your full cooperation in this matter, your sentence is suspended. This court is now adjourned.
Hank is on trial for violating the regulation. He wins. Let's see why by following his reasoning. His first point is that government is force. As George Washington himself said, government is not reason, it is not eloquence, it is force. So Hank challenges the judges to come take his goods by force. They recoil defensively, insisting that the trial is a matter of law, not force. But the power to impose coercive penalties is indeed force. Think about this the next time you read about a business person on trial. It's proper for the government to protect against theft, fraud, or the violation of a contract. But we also have regulations that amount to 10,000 commandments that have nothing to do with property or fraud or contract. Hank is on trial for one of those. Now, Hank's second point is in response to the judge's claim that the Fair Shares Law is in the public interest. What is the public interest? Your interest? My interest? Your Uncle Fred's interest? In a free society, the only genuine public interest is in having a government that protects our rights and leaves us alone to deal with others as we choose. The problem is that the public interest is an empty concept until someone gives it meaning by declaring what the interest of the public is. And that someone is invariably a person or a group with political power who pursue their own interests and their own ideas under the guise of serving the public. But there's another much deeper problem with the concept of the public interest. That concept, as the judges invoke it, is the idea that we should all sacrifice for others. We're all in this together, as many politicians have said. Reardon says no. He asserts his right to do his work by the judgment of his own mind and to keep the fruits of his labor. Now, he's not claiming the right to exploit anyone. On the contrary, he has created the best metal for his customers. He has created jobs for his workers. He invests most of his profits in expanding production, which benefits everyone. But the benefits to others are not what justifies his existence. They are not what justifies his profits. You know, many people in business today seem to feel they have to apologize for the profits they made by their productive efforts. They emphasize the benefits to, quote, the economy. Or they try to launder their wealth by giving it away to charity, one cause or another. They don't stand up for themselves and for the productive achievements that earned them that wealth. And thereby, indirectly, they give moral sanction to those who claim the right to take their wealth and redistribute it. Not Reardon. He wants it understood clearly that he works for his own benefit and that he does not recognize the good of others as a justification for his existence. This is the heart of Ayn Rand's message in Atlas Shrugged. Individuals are ends in themselves, with a moral right to pursue their own lives, their own happiness, their own well-being. sacrificing those values to some collective good is not a noble idea. It's the road to hell. As Hank watches the world around him going to hell, as the economy becomes more and more politicized, he stands up proudly for his right to live as an end in himself.
In my opinion, homeowners associations, management companies, collection companies, and HOA law firms are at the root of a new form of child abuse. As a result of the actions of the few, children are abused as a result of the homeowners associations, management companies, collection companies, and HOA law firms. These groups inflict an enormous amount of stress on the children through their parents and guardians, the people who own the property. As the property owners become stressed, the children live in that stressed environment. History tells us that once these children grow up and move into adulthood, they're going to have a great deal of resentment over dealing with what they grew up with. I believe that these former HOA children, soon to be adults, are going to retaliate in droves. The people that they are going to retaliate against will be the children, soon to be adults, whose families are involved in the abuse. It is more than disturbing to me that there have been no tracking systems set up, locally or nationally, to find out where these families are going once their homes have been foreclosed or they have left the neighborhood due to HOA syndrome. The heightened amount of psychological and physical stress on the families takes them down a road that will ultimately come back to haunt them. Our federal government must step in and disband the homeowners associations, management companies, and collection companies, and HOA law firms before it's too late. If there are any problems in the association and the homeowners want to confront those problems, the Homeowners Association Board of Directors, management companies, collection companies, and HOA lawyers will always parrot, "You knew what you were getting into before you bought a home in the association." I would argue that this is absolutely not true. The documents which I've included will show you that the CC&Rs are voluminous and overwhelming in nature, written by lawyers with the intent to confuse. If you attempt to get clarification, they will tell you to call your attorney. If you want to get clarification after you buy a home in a homeowners association, they will tell you to get an attorney. The listener and reader should understand that the homeowners associations exist outside the confines of constitutional law, a provision provided for them by our own government. As homeowners associations have turned into ghettos and private villages, they operate by another set of rules and regulations, created for and by homeowners associations to keep their homeowners in line and provide money, lots and lots of money, for the management companies, the collection companies, and the homeowners associations, attorneys, and lawyers. Although I cannot prove the following statement, it is my belief that the reason the government has not stopped the homeowners associations, management companies, collection companies, and homeowners law firms is because of the large amount of double taxation revenue flowing into the system that goes into the pocket of the government. As I discussed on the section, Why Homeowners Associations? Should the government take over these organizations, our government would then have to justify the reason and the absence for constitutional law in the homeowners association. As this gets worse and the matters of foreclosure increase across the country, I believe the banks will stop loaning in homeowners associations and subdivisions. These subdivisions and homeowners associations at the same time are making arrangements to open private lending institutions to circumvent this inevitable problem. Buyers who continue to believe that they will be safe in the subdivisions will then be forced to use lending institutions owned and operated by the homeowners associations. These institutions will garner more and more control, institute more fees and charges, and cause more problems for homeowners. Increased discrimination will prevail, and homeowners will be at the mercy of the homeowners associations and lending institutions to be able to buy or sell their property. To truly understand what has happened and what you have listened to requires that you suspend your disbelief. To see things as they are rather than you want to believe they are is a difficult thing to do. It is one thing to suspend one's disbelief an hour and 45 minutes while watching movies such as Star Wars and Jurassic Park and thinking that it's actually true. It's quite another to look at the reality in which you live and see it for what it is. Though the CC&Rs contain statements that the rules and regulations are reasonable, I believe there is nothing reasonable about them. Statutes and CC&Rs make reference to specific laws that govern the homeowners associations. The reality is there is no one around to enforce those laws. You may not go to the court system, you may not go to the state bar, and you may only go to the ombudsman's office if, in fact, you are given authorization to have mediation. A long and protracted process that gets expensive for the homeowner. In Clark County, Nevada, there is one ombudsman's office for over 2 million homeowners. This has been created by design so that problems cannot be handled. While the management companies, collection companies, and homeowners association law firms have armies of people to support what they're doing to you, the homeowner has virtually nothing to help them resolve the problems. In my work, in this entire book, I've avoided using names of individuals whom I've dealt with, whom I believe are corrupt and have acted unconscionably. I'm going to break my rule right now. Her name is Lindsay Lucas. Listen to the message that is left by Lindsay Lucas. Her actions cost this individual $1.2 million by illegally restricting her from obtaining the information so that she could go forward with her purchase.
Hi, Robin. This is Lindsay with Midland Property Management. I received your voicemail to Melody requesting a conference call from me today. Unfortunately, with regards to this restraining order, it specifically states that any agent acting or anyone representing Jim Anderson, which our management company is an agent of the HOA and the board of directors, and Jim Anderson, I will not be able to speak with you until the restraining order has been lifted. So I guess if you would like, you could have your counsel contact us or some other means, but we cannot speak to you directly due to the restraining order. And if you have any questions, I would direct it towards your attorney. Thank you.
Here are a few thoughts regarding how I take care of matters in homeowners associations. As I have said throughout this site, I cannot give you legal advice, but I can tell you what I have done and what I have found to be successful in the fight against the corruption in homeowners associations. Should you choose to follow my lead, that of course is your election. I send all mail certified. I go to my local post office, gather a stack of certified cards, and fill them out so that they are ready to go. I take the extra 5 minutes so that I can trace every document and communication with the homeowners association. When I issue a check to the homeowners association, I always note in the memorandum section, paid under protest. This was one of the lessons I learned when I was finally heard by a judge. Though the judge ultimately denied hearing the case because it was a homeowners association forcing me into arbitration, he did state, "Why did you pay it anyway?" I learned a lesson. By paying under protest, I have stated that I didn't want to pay, but had no other choice. I always follow up every payment by checking to make sure that the check is cashed. It's now common practice to target homeowners by not cashing their checks or claiming that they never did receive the check, putting the homeowner in default, and starting the process of tagging on late fees and charges. As the homeowner gets angry, the matter gets worse. More and more homeowners in the country have lost their home because of this process. If I am fined, I will always pay the fine. After I pay the fine, I file the necessary documents for mediation to get back the money. It is unfortunate that as a result of this comportment on the part of homeowners associations, management companies, collection companies, and HOA lawyers, that they make money whether they are right or wrong. The goal is always, there is no money in resolve. Whenever possible, I file an injunction. It is only through the injunctive process that I am allowed to go to court. Under those circumstances, the judge can make a decision forcing the homeowners association, management company, collection company, and the HOA law firms to cease and desist their actions. Unfortunately, as a homeowner, you will pay homeowner association legal fees and you will pay your own attorney fees. Throughout this section of the book, I hope I have provided you with enough incentive to do the following. Don't buy a home in a homeowners association. Let me repeat that to you. Don't buy a home in a homeowners association. Don't put your family at risk. Don't put your children in this position. Do not allow yourself to live under the stress and pain that comes with living in a homeowners association.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Pope Francis talks about the problem in scathing terms, saying corrupt politicians, businessmen, and priests are everywhere.
Acquire a better understanding of elder abuse and elder abuse law. Ask yourself, is there a member of your family, or are you someone who is being affected by elder abuse in your homeowners association? Take action. Do something. The field of psychology has within it psychopathology. That is, understanding the pathology that's within the homeowners association neighborhood. You're all being affected by each other's pathology. Understanding a homeowners association is an important thing to do. That's what this homeowners association piece is all about. Read about it. Be sure that you know what you're getting yourself into before you buy in a homeowners association.
Please take a moment to read this legal statement. The next time section will begin automatically in 20 seconds, or you may begin at any time by clicking on the clock.